I like to read Nancy Drew books when I'm in a reading slump. This year I've been in a pretty big reading slump. I just haven't wanted to read anything new. That means I've read several Nancy Drew books so far this year. Normally, when I read Nancy Drew, I turn my brain off. They're written for kids, so I don't need to use my whole brain to focus on the book while I read them, like I would reading books written for an older audience. Unfortunately, I recently had a bad experience reading a Nancy Drew book. I didn't turn my brain off soon enough into reading it and was disgusted by the premise of the book. In The Clue in the Crumbling Wall, Nancy is asked by a police officer to help find a missing woman. The young niece of the missing woman has been getting into trouble with the law, stealing plants from people's yards, and the police officer thinks that finding her aunt will help. Now you might be thinking, they want to find the girl's aunt because she needs another parental figure around, since her father is dead and her mother is ill. But that's not why they want to find her. It's because the missing woman was left an inheritance by a friend, and if she doesn't claim her inheritance in 2 weeks, she'll lose it. And the little girl and her mother need that money. The only reason Nancy is asked to find a woman who has been missing for 10 years is so her family can get her money. Disgusting. To make things worse, do you want to know what will happen to the inheritance if it's not claimed? It'll be donated to charity. What type of person feels entitled to another person's money? Money that would be donated to charity. Anyway, that really pissed me off, and I didn't turn my brain off while I read. That meant that I noticed things that I normally ignore. Which brings us to the video title. Nancy Drew is propaganda. More precisely, the original Nancy Drew series, Nancy Drew Mystery Stories, is propaganda. Nancy Drew was created by Gossett and Dunlop as the girl version of the Hardy Boys. The series exists not as art, but as a way to make money and to portray the ideal teen girl to the young girls who read the books. Nancy is the perfect teenage girl. She's wealthy, attractive, athletic, intelligent, accomplished, and good at everything she does. Despite being smart enough and wealthy enough to go to college, she does not. She also doesn't have a paying job. She occupies her time with hobbies and charity work. Unlike the Hardy Boys, Nancy never accepts payment for her mystery solving. She does accept gifts from the people she helps, not for their monetary value, but as souvenirs. On the rare occasion that there is a monetary reward for solving a mystery, Nancy donates the money to charity. Nancy won't even accept free travel from the people she helps. In The Secret of the Golden Pavilion, Nancy is hired by some clients of her father to solve a mystery, and they pay for her, Bess, and George to fly to Hawaii. In return for them paying Nancy's travel expenses, Mr. Drew takes on their legal case for free. Because good girls should make financial sacrifices to help others, I guess. Whenever Nancy is solving a mystery on a Sunday, the books include a line pointing out that she goes to church Sunday mornings. In the books, Nancy and George are constantly fat-shaming Bess. Bess is shamed for her food choices at least once in every book, despite eating the same as the other two girls and not being fat. Underweight girls are easier to overpower and control. That is why skinny is being pushed as being desirable. That's why there's this current push to resurrect the 2000s diet culture. Men want to keep women weak, so eat that slice of chocolate cake and screw the patriarchy. Despite being athletic, Nancy is always easily overpowered by any man. In The Quest for the Missing Map, Nancy and another girl are easily overpowered when they try to stop a prowler, who they caught sneaking out of the girl's house. Even when it's 2 against 1, we, the readers, are supposed to believe that men will always be stronger and better. The propaganda isn't just centered around Nancy and the image of ideal girlhood. There's also an element of classism. Nancy and her friends are very wealthy, and most of the people Nancy helps are also wealthy, or at least middle class, while the bad guys are poor. This creates the stigma around poverty. The wealthy people are presented as being good and trustworthy, while most poor people are lazy and would rather commit crimes than get a good, honest job. Of course, there are exceptions. Occasionally, Nancy helps someone who is poor, but the poor people she helps were never born into poverty. They were only temporarily struggling financially, often because illness has left them unable to work, or because they're orphans who are struggling to make their way in the world without a financial safety net. This classism is then demonstrated in The Clue in the Crumbling Wall. The little girl, Joan, who has been getting in trouble with the law, is really a good girl. The book suggests that she's really a good girl who's only poor because her father is dead and her mother is ill. Meanwhile, Teddy Hooper, Joan's friend and neighbor, is an irredeemable bad boy because he was born in poverty. His father is a petty criminal and his mother refuses to get a job. It's not so much that poor people are inherently bad, it's that poverty is a punishment for bad people. The good people who are struggling financially always find a way out of poverty by the end of the book. They might receive an inheritance, recover from illness and be able to return to work, or their struggling business will suddenly become successful. This ignores reality, where capitalism is rigged against the poor, making it nearly impossible to escape poverty. I believe that Nancy Drew is a reaction to the growing feminist movement. In the earliest books in the series, Nancy is very independent. In the first book, The Secret of the Old Clock, originally published in 1930, Nancy solves the mystery completely on her own. I'm more familiar with the revised versions of the original 34 books. In the originals, Nancy was much more independent. Starting in 1959, the first 34 books in the series were revised and republished. In these new versions, Nancy became increasingly reliant on men to help her solve mysteries. Nancy went from solving mysteries on her own and rescuing herself from dangerous situations to always being accompanied by her friends, often at her father's insistence, to needing to be rescued by Ned, Bert, and Dave, or some other men. It's not a coincidence that Nancy became increasingly less independent in the books written in the 60s. As the women's rights movement grew in popularity, Nancy grew more dependent on her boyfriend to save her. The last book I've read in the series is number 48, The Crooked Banister, published in 1971. So I don't know how Nancy's character changed as society shifted. Nancy Drew mystery stories continued to be released until 2003. From 1986 to 1997, there was a spin-off series called Nancy Drew Files. The original series was replaced by a new series, Nancy Drew Girl Detective. It was published from 2004 to 2012. In 2013, the latest incarnation of Nancy Drew was released, Nancy Drew Diaries. The latest book in that series was published in January of this year, and the next book is scheduled for release in January 2026. I've read the first 4 books of Nancy Drew Girl Detective and 16 of the Nancy Drew Diaries books. They're much less problematic than the version from the 1960s. To me, they do not seem like propaganda, just mediocre books meant to entertain middle grade readers. They're not bad, but there are definitely better books available. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching. If you like the video, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a comment letting me know if you've read any Nancy Drew books. Did you like them? Did I ruin them for you by pointing out the way they are used to manipulate young readers? Have you read any of the newer incarnations, including Nancy Drew and the Clue Crew or the Nancy Drew notebooks? I've never seen any of the Nancy Drew notebooks books. Anyway, thanks again for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.